I'm going to introduce myself very quickly. My name is Beatriz. I'm a product designer here at Supernova. I've been with Supernova for a little over than a year, and it's been a lot of fun and getting to know a lot of people that work in design systems and learning and growing a lot with them. And today I'm going to share a bit of knowledge we've gained throughout our usability research and hopefully help you. And with me, I have Vlad. He's a voice, but he's very present. He's going to be answering your questions in the chat. If you'd like to have a quick introduction, Vlad.
Yes, I'm Vlad, and I'm a solutions engineer with Supernova, and I'll be happy to help you out with any technical questions that you might have.
Awesome. So also, once again, we have the chat and we have the Q&A session in Zoom. Feel free to leave your answers. In the end, we'll be answering them. And Vlad will be answering some questions you have. I'll also like to share that this is being recorded and we're going to share this in YouTube. So you can always revert to this presentation because we're going to cover a lot of ground. I'm going to share also in the chat our social handles where you can find us and also can talk to us synchronously. And you also can turn on the captions if you need in Zoom. And finally, just the last information that I want to share is that this presentation is actually available in our Design Figma Supernova community profile. You can come here and I'm going to share it in the chat as well. You can actually duplicate this file and use it as an example library. It has instructions. You can follow along. Feel free to do so. So I guess we can start. We have some participants. Let's get on with it. And so this presentation, we're going to talk about the Supernova's module, which is documentation. But for those of you who don't know, we are a design systems platform that focuses on their three main pillars, which are I would say the heart is the documentation module. And then we have a module that allows you to manage and govern your design system data. And also another one that allows you to export your design system elements like tokens and assets to code. But today we're focusing on documentation. And why is documentation so important to us and why we feel it's very important for teams. From what we've explored and talked to, it does help teams leverage on consistency, and a good documentation is also a North Star for teams to refer to. It also improves efficiency and allows people that are actually working on features and products don't need to reinvent the wheel, and they can design and implement things with much more ease. It allows scalability of teams and also onboarding of new elements to the companies, and it does facilitate a lot of collaboration, and it's always a point of conversation that stakeholders and team members can have. But we do know it is a challenging work, and I asked you to share with me in the chat some of your pain points you've been having throughout your design system journey, and I'm sure you can relate with some of them that are here. So maintaining the consistency is pretty tough, and keeping your elements up to date and your design decisions up to date is also quite challenging. Finding the right balance between the voice and how you're going to share your information, not to overdo it, or if it's not enough, and establishing foundations and getting buy-in from your stakeholders. We know it's not always easy, and having custom solutions, for example, is quite expensive. And so here we are, we're here to help you, and our goal is to I could say that our three main high-level goals with our documentation module is to help you connect your elements in one place so that you can always have them up to date. You can set up quickly a documentation website that's focused on design system language, and you can I'll talk further about this in more detail, but we have things that are solely focused on design systems. And one of our main goals is also to allow you to customize the documentation fully to your needs and have your own voice, and this can increase motivation and adoption, etc. So now I'm going to talk to you about the documentation editor. This is what we're going to cover. So essentially, it's like you're establishing your documentation from scratch. You're doing how that would look like, doing it in Supernova. And let's say you did your homework, you did your audit on your design system, and you decided already the architecture you want to give to your documentation. So this is, we're going to cover a lot of grounds, like I mentioned, but you can always revert to this video recording in the future. So this is the Supernova mini version of the documentation editor. It's not a fully easy week editor. You can see more or less how your documentation will look, but for more fully fledged elements like the design system specific blocks, you don't fully see them. I'll explain to you later how you can do that. So how the architecture works is essentially we have, you can structure your documentation website in groups, which are main themes like, let's say, foundations or components. You can add pages to these groups, and you can add tabs to these pages, which you can, for example, use to differentiate tone and voice of what you're documenting. And all of these elements can be nested. You can structure your website however makes most sense for you. And we'll be covering blocks later, which is a big part of our documentation editor. We offer you a lot of editing capabilities. We offer you rich text editing. Again, the blocks for your content. You can reorder your content however it makes more sense for you, even at the block level or at the architecture level. And our editor allows you to, we have keyboard shortcuts that you can revert to for you to have a better editing experience and more easily. And so we are a product that doesn't want to live in a vacuum. We know that in our everyday work, we use many products like the ones you can see here, and we integrate with most of them, with all of them that are described here actually. And so our goal is to be a one-stop shop where you can revert to when it comes to your design system, and then we help you translate these decisions and connections to your documentation. Let's see how. Okay, so as I mentioned, the blocks are a very important part in our documentation editor. You can, it's how you get, it matters how you get the data from your design system data, to our system. And once again, you can use this file as an example for testing Supernova. But essentially, if you come here to this tab, to the design system data tab, you can connect your file, and you can get your design system elements in Supernova. Just a note, we work with, for elements like frames, tokens, components, and assets, we work with Figma libraries that are published. But you can also use a normal Figma file for what we call in the system frames. And these can be used, for example, let's say you have illustrations with your components anatomy, for example, you can use normal Figma files for this use case. Now that we put our data on, again, we have a lot of blocks that help you in your editing experience. Just a note on this file, every place that has an underlining is a link, so it directs you to our documentation page where you can find more detailed information about each one of these. But essentially, all of the blocks we have, you can do normal editing of content, and also connect media, and I'm going to talk about and do some layout as well, and edit. But I'm going to talk about the blocks that are more focused on design systems. And let's start with tokens. We have, I'm going to ask if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat. Feel free. We're here to answer all your doubts. But I was mentioning for tokens, we have three main blocks, which are token group blocks, token list, and token detail. For token group and token, it's when you import your data to Supernova, you can import it through a Figma library file connection, or for example, the Token Studio connection as well. Or you can create your own tokens inside of Supernova, and you can display them in your documentation through these blocks. And for example, for token groups, we search your token data, and we keep, every time you make a change, we keep them up to date. And this reflects on your documentation, so we can help you get a better, more efficient way of connecting your data. So here you can see how it renders in the final documentation. We also have component-specific blocks. You can see here on the content editor side how a team could set up a component table, but then they can go to the documentation and actually use these blocks, for example, component health to showcase how the status of a component is. Or you can also use a component checklist, for example, to see if the component, or share with your team if the component is already fully implemented, or if it's compliant to accessibility norms, etc. You can use this block for that effect. And we have a more overarching component block, which is the component overview table, that allows you to essentially show a reflection of the table of your design system data in your documentation, where people can refer to as knowing the status of these components, where the code repository is, for example, where the Figma correspondent of this component is. And this is an example of how these three blocks would show in your documentation. And they all have interactive elements to them. For example, you can choose many parameters in the component health block. We also have developer-focused blocks. These are essentially, we could say, these three blocks on the side. They are render React code, where you can connect your NPM libraries and render your styled components that are in your NPM library, that your design system consumers can actually refer to, and they are interactive. They can see the code that this component has. You also have code block, which you can share snippets of code for your components, whatever makes more sense to you. And we have storybook embed blocks that you can connect storybook stories, and you can style, for example, if you want embeds, or if you want to show the add-ons or not, as we can see here. Also, we have other blocks that are, we call them media and asset blocks. And these can be very useful for you to share elements like your assets, which we call things like things that are actually exportable from your code, from your design system, for example, your icons. This is how it's rendered. You can see now the block allows you to, your design system consumers to directly search, for example, in your throughout your assets. This I'm showing here now a Figma frame, which is also what I mentioned earlier. We can scrape your files and find your components where you can share, for example, your variants of these components and the props that are within the designs themselves. And you can export them to, build them in your documentation and expose them with much more ease. Again, these are all automatically updated depending on your plan, but you can sync updates and have your Figma and your Supernova always up to date. Okay, so another thing that I mentioned in the beginning that is very important to us is to allow you to customize the most to your needs. We know that a big part of design systems is actually the tone and voice and the brand image and the design decisions that go beyond just deciding that go along deciding all of these factors. So we allow you to customize your documentation to the max, and this can be done, let's say, throughout these four these 4 ways. You can edit things directly in the editor. You can customize the style at the block level with block variants, which I'll speak more about in a bit. And you can also go to the settings and customize things like CSS and even color of your documentation, etc. So as I mentioned, at the block level, you can customize things. We have this element here, which is called block variants, which are essentially the way this block you're seeing in the editor is going to render. And we have a multitude of options. You can also do this with layout components, blocks like tabs and tables, for example. And these are the options, some of the options we offer you. Most of the blocks, especially the design system focus blocks, have block variants for you to choose from. You can also add, like I mentioned, throughout the settings, you can customize the whole look and feel of your website. You can add your brand personality through updating your logo, using your brand colors. And you can also do more advanced things like customizing your CSS theme overrides that you can tailor to your needs. And in the end, I showed you, this GIF is showing you an example of documentation websites that use Supernova and look extremely different from our staple documentation site, which is also very styled to be used out of the box. So you don't need to focus primarily on changing everything at once. And with this customization and a feature we've released quite recently is actually a preview server that allows you to see all the style changes and customizations you've done to your documentation before actually publishing it. So you can play around with, let's say you want to play around with styling and variant options, block variant options. You can use the preview before publishing to your consumers. And this is a very new feature. Another thing that I want to mention is that, again, you can customize things to the max. We offer also SSO solutions. We offer multi-brand support, also Google Analytics, and you can have your own custom domain. These are all options that we offer. And if you want to know more about them, we have them in our documentation website, or if you feel free to ask any questions about these. And so that's it. When you're ready, you would publish your first version of your documentation after exploring all the tiny bits and pieces. There is another example of design systems that are actually public that use Supernova. And as you can see, they're quite different from each other, which we love, because for us, design system documentation should allow you to tailor it uniquely to your needs. And that's it. So again, I'm going to mention this file is in our design system community profile. You can use it, revert to it, look at the GIFs in more detail and try to replicate what I showed you here. I think the best way to learn is actually to get your hands on it. It's here, the example library. And these are our social links. You can reach out to us. We have a Discord community where people share their doubts or share their thoughts. And I think we're ready for the Q&A part. Please share your questions. I can see we have a first one. Just wait a minute. Thank you for your questions. I'll just wait a little bit longer. Thank you for your questions. They're running in. I'm gonna start. So the first question we have is from McKenna Strain. Thank you for your question. And the question is, do you support animation video GIFs or GIFs that show how components work? When importing components from Figma, does Supernova pull the component configuration data, such as how to use this component? Great question. So for now, how we deal with components, let me go back to this. So the way we see components is in an agnostic way at the design system management level. So essentially we have this data table where you can connect your component elements. And by agnostic, I mean, it's not necessarily tied to Figma or tied to, let's say, a code repository, but you can make these connections in this tab that I showed you here with the table. And so you can assign a component to a Figma component that we import from your component library. And with this, you can render, for example, in the Figma frames, the component props you have. And we support GIFs in the image block. So you can connect GIFs that show the interaction of your component that are made by you. But how we essentially show, like I show you here in this slide, you can search for your components and we show you the different variants in the frames of the props. If you have a frame that has the anatomy, for example, you can showcase it and it will update real time. Another question. That Adam Forrester asked us how do themes work with Token Studio. I think that's a whole new fully fledged topic that we need to answer in another webinar, which we will do very soon. So keep keep an eye for that. But I think Vlad can share with you the documentation we have about Token Studios and the connection we do with it, because we do support themes for Token Studio. So Vlad, if you can then answer Adam, that would be awesome. More questions?
Yes, I'll just add the link for that in the chat. Would that be fine?
Yes, yeah, of course, that sounds great.
Perfect.
Sorry, I'm just reading another question. I would love McKenna Strain. I'll ask another question about tokens, Figma tokens, and how we deal with them in the connection. Also, you can revert to our documentation as well. Vlad will post another. We have another documentation about this sync and how it works in Supernova. And Gretchen asked, are there plans to offer an H4 text heading style? Yes, there are. Our main, we have this, I'm going to share with you as well. We have a product suggestions website, let's say a pool where we allow you to share requests and feature requests with us, and we do pay attention to them. And the H4 text heading is something that people have been asking for, and we will add it pretty soon. I don't know the exact date, but keep an eye for that. We'll offer you that option in the near future. Thank you. And one last question. There's another one about Token Studio. I see this is a very, very popular topic. We'll take note of that and probably do something about it very soon. And Alexander Caldeira is asking, is there a plan to allow using our own tokens to customize the documentation look and feel? You can, if I'm not mistaken, I can share with you another link as well about customization, but you can use your tokens in the settings look and feel section to customize your documentation. If you go to settings and look and feel, you can select here your own tokens that are in the system for styling your documentation. I believe that is it in terms of questions. Any last minute questions? I'm going to share, whilst you have some time to do it, I'm going to share the website I mentioned, the feature request page I mentioned. Feel free to post any last minute questions. Okay. Are there any? Sorry?
I believe that's
That's it. No extra questions. Again, I'm going to share this last slide with you. These are our social media handles. Feel free to contact us and ask for any more follow-up questions. We'll be happy to hear. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here, and I hope this helped and gave you some insights.
Sorry, wait a second. I see there. Yeah, I just answered to Alexandre about, or who else was it? Just give me a second. No, to Alex about the Angular support. I did not see that one.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I did already in text, and I can see there are still a couple of questions that my question. I can. Oh, okay. This is one about the border radius. I know. Can you see them as well? From Alexandra Caldeira. I can't use border radius or space, for example.
I see. At the moment, yes, you can only use, that's a great point. You can use color tokens for that. Yes, there are plans on increasing the customization, but for now, and using your own tokens that are in the system, but for now, you do need to use them as CSS variables. Last thing, this is in the chat is the feature requests page I mentioned. So you can upvote features and share with us what you like to see in upcoming roadmap. Okay, well, thank you, Ulshan, for your questions. Have a great day, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm pretty reachable, and Vlad the same. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great rest of the day or beginning of the day, depending where you are.
You too.
Bye, everyone.